trans women in particular with like this really, with like some real warrior energy, you know, for the trans movement, for the trans struggle, out here willing to die, out here repping transness, like I'm willing to die, like I'm putting the X on my back, I'm putting the S on my chest, like I'm just really, really here for this struggle. And I just don't see a lot of the ones who emulate the men, the ones who mirror the men, having conversations that regard that. I hear a lot of the ones who identify as men celebrating brotherhood, creating a brotherhood. They're not focused on transness. They are celebrating a brotherhood, and they can see even trans women in that brotherhood. I see them celebrating brotherhood over transness. I think that they acknowledge transness, but I think first and foremost, there's an adoration and a celebration for that brotherhood. Even with gay men, like it's always brotherhood, you know, it's brotherhood above these other things, especially black brotherhood. So I asked myself, how do I feel? Like, am I willing to die for just transness? Knowing that so many people who use that name, trans attracted, trans amorous, transvestites, so many things that are so far removed from how I see myself. You know, transgender people who, you know, from Caitlyn Jenner's narrative, live their whole lives, you know, being violent in a wealthy Caucasian man's body who upholds the system. Like being violent, we call it privilege, but you're being violent. You know, you spend the bulk of your life being violent to poor people, and then you transition to become a white woman, and you are respected for that. For me, this battle is about womanhood, you know, and there's a lot of fights going on inside of womanhood. Like not only are we fighting to protect the borders of womanhood, but we're also fighting inside of womanhood with one another because we don't celebrate sisterhood like, you know, men celebrate brotherhood. Like so many times, we always looking for allies. Allies, where my allies? Where my supporters? Okay, well, what the fuck are you supporting besides black trans? Who are you an ally to? What do you stand for besides black trans? Because that's all the fuck I hear you talking about. If you want someone to be a supportive community member, you want someone to really, really care, then you need to care about something besides yourself too. Because otherwise, it's just patriarchy in a wig with titties. You can't align yourself with real people who are committed to the liberation of poor people, black people, people of color, Afro-Indigenous people. You can't align yourself with the liberation of the movement if you keep centering yourself, if it's just about you. That means that you think the way that elitist people do. If you can't understand that if the only people you are worried about are the people who are in closest proximity to you, the only people you can have concern or compassion for are the people who are in close proximity to you, how can you be upset when those who are wealthy have more and are furthest from you in proximity don't have any respect for you, don't care about you? Make it make sense. Outed herself. She spilled her own tea. She took control of her narrative. And for me, the fact that she was a sex change that was, not to center girls who have the sex change, because it's not for everybody. I don't think everyone should get the sex change. I'm not around here promoting sex changes, but I want to take a moment to celebrate her as a sex change, because normally when we get that pussy, we supposed to go sit in a corner and be trying to pretend to be biological, pretend that we came here with perfect XX chromosomes. We got 4-5 children that came out our coochie over here. We just finished having a cycle. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is what we're supposed to perform. Like, sex changes are supposed to be like that. Like, sex change is not supposed to have their own life, their own narrative. They're not allowed to talk about the trans journey anymore. A sex change is just supposed to be sitting in the room with the biological females while they talk about their cycles, their uteruses, while they talk about all of their normal experiences as women, and we're not allowed to say anything because we got a pussy and we trying to pretend our pussy just like they pussy. And I am not about to erase my narrative like that, because this pussy didn't fall in my lap. I walked through hell for my pussy. And I'm not fixing to sit in silence and pretend like I didn't walk through hell just so I could blend in with you. I love you. I honor you. I celebrate you. Hell, I mirror you. I embody you. But girl, the pussy didn't fall in my lap. I went through for this pussy. And no, I may never give birth to any children physically, but I still paid for this pussy. And it wasn't just the money that I gave the doctor. I paid for this pussy, and I've been paying for this pussy ever since I embraced this path. Ever since 30 years ago, when I accepted my truth and I started walking in my truth, I've been paying for this pussy. So I'm not fixing to sit in a room and diminish myself just because I don't have stories about contractions. Just because I don't have stories about my cycle being in sync with my oldest daughter, or just because I don't have those kind of stories, I'm not going to diminish myself, because I am still a reflection of the goddess. I am still a reflection of the divine feminine. I just don't have the same stories that you do, sis. My stories are different, sis. Because we don't have sisterhood. Yeah, you see a couple of black women banding together talking about black girl magic. But it is not. It is a drop in the bucket when we think about the capacity and the audacity of black women. When we think about what we truly have room to hold space for, what black femininity has the capacity to hold space for, when we think about the expansiveness that goes with the integrity of that phrase, black woman. It's supposed to be expansive, but there's a very narrow perspective when we start thinking about black women, even though in real life we know that's not what black women look like. You can't put black women in a box. A black woman can look so many different ways. I've seen this for myself. I know it to be true. My commitment is to the expansion of her. My commitment is to the expansion of the reflection of her. Because the conversation around her was diminished in the Bible. It has been diminished in the church. It has been diminished in spaces that are governed by the brotherhood, who are the majority in power in this nation. It has been diminished by those who govern this world, who hold the most power in the world right now. So that's what I'm here for. That's what my life is about. That's what my testimony is about. It is about the expansion of that conversation. And if my soul be on the line, if my life be in danger, then my life be in danger for that cause.